Trading Global Markets Decoded with DailyFX is brought to you by IG, the world-leading online trading and investments provider. Welcome. You're listening to the Trading Global Markets Decoded podcast with DailyFX. I'm your host, analyst and editor at DailyFX, Martin Essex. We bring you trading insights on the world's biggest market, the $5 trillion a day FX market, as well as commodities and other key assets, while describing the opportunities that may be emerging around the world. My guest in this episode is the prominent investor and investment biker Jim Rogers. Jim Rogers, who's now based in Singapore, is the chairman of Rogers Holdings and Beeland Interests. Previously, with George Soros, he was co-founder of the Quantum Fund and Soros Fund Management, and he was also the creator of the Rogers International Commodities Index. Jim, welcome.
I'm delighted to be here, Martin.
Thank you. So let me start at the beginning. What was it like running a major hedge fund?
Well, it so happened that that's all I loved it so much. When I went to Wall Street, I had no idea. I knew nothing about it. I didn't even know there was a difference in stocks and bonds. But I fell in love. I would have done it for free. I couldn't do it for free because I didn't have any money, but it was so much fun. I would have done it for free. So when we were doing it, it was what I loved. I couldn't wait for for morning to come. I couldn't wait for the markets to open. It was just wonderful, wonderful fun for me. It was a consuming passion, but it wasn't work. It was just fun.
Why a hedge fund, though, rather than a standard investment fund or indeed a private equity fund?
No. If you're going to be in the investment business, the point is to make money. And the best way to make money is the structure is a hedge fund. I mean, if you're just there to discuss Chinese ceramics or something, then start a fund, but just a regular fund. But if you're there to have fun and to make money, the best structure is a hedge fund.
So how does that work? Are you effectively looking for market inefficiencies, the mispricing of assets between markets? Is that an aspect of it?
Well, I don't know. That's too elegant for me. I was just looking for cheap things. I didn't care what they were. If it was cheap and I could see changes taking place, it didn't matter if it was a country or an industry or a commodity or a currency or bond, anything. I wasn't proud. I was just looking for cheap stuff that might go up.
Okay, that sounds very simple, I suppose. Obviously,
or I should say, because we did sell short, or expensive things that should go down because we sold short as well.
So you did long or short positions there?
Yes.
Now, the hedge funds that you've been in have been essentially very large ones. Do you think it's really important to have that sort of scale for investors? I mean, do you need a lot of money to do it, to start off, to be successful?
Well, no, quite the contrary, Martin. When we started, there was $12 million US. That was anything but large. When we went out on our own, I should say, before that, it was maybe $60 million US or something. No, in those days, hedge funds there weren't very many. They were unknown, small. I mean, now everybody, every kid in college is starting a hedge fund in her room now. But in those days, you could count them on one hand. We could have all had lunch together.
I don't think that they're as successful now as you were.
Well, but since then, everybody has figured out the market. Look, Martin, when I went to Wall Street in the 60s, it was a backwater. The city of London was a backwater. Wall Street was a backwater. Only the idiot son, not even the idiot daughter, would go to Wall Street in those days.
So did your parents tell you to become a lawyer or a doctor?
Yeah, exactly. That's exactly what happened. Nearly everybody in my class at college wanted to become a lawyer or a doctor. In fact, I did too. That's what I was going to do. Thank goodness I stumbled onto Wall Street. Otherwise, I'd probably be a lawyer in Atlanta or something now. So no, but they were unknown. Wall Street was a backwater. Nobody would go to Wall Street except the idiot son in those days. Now, you know the rest of the story. By the time the 80s and 90s came, oh my gosh, everybody heard about all these guys and how much money they could make, etc. And so, but by the way, that's going to come to an end too soon. But at the moment, it's still a hot place to be.
Okay, so I think of hedge funds as taking long-term views of markets, not sort of day trading in and out. Is that how you were working then, and is it how you're working now? Long-term view?
First of all, I'm much lazier now than I used to be or have other things to do. I've got two fabulous daughters that I would like to spend as much time with as I can. So I'm not working nearly as hard as I used to on all of this. But everybody had their own style. You know, there was a guy named Mike Steinhardt who was just a genius at short-term trading. It was just astonishing to watch him work. Me, I'm the worst short-term trader in the world, single worst market timer in the world. But it depends on the person. Mike was fantastic at it, and there are lots of guys who can just, you know, short-term trade with their eyes closed. I'm not one of them.
So you do take a long-term view when you're buying or selling?
Because I'm not very smart and I'm lazy.
Neither of those are true, I'm sure. What are your strategic investments now, assuming you still have some, and what's your current positioning, again, as you have open trades?
China, Russia, I've just started dipping into Zimbabwe, but it's tiny, not even enough to talk about at the moment. Agriculture, I would say those, I'm trying to find Korea, ways to get involved with Korea because of the coming, opening of the 38th parallel. But those are probably my places that I have more interest in other places right now.
I'll come back to that in a moment, but, your
the U.S. dollar, the U.S. dollar too. I own a lot of U.S. dollars.
Okay, I'll come back to that in a second, because of course you're famous for your positions on China and indeed agriculture. But just, if I could first, just turn to politics for a moment. What do you make of Donald Trump, politely, please?
Well, no, listen, he's the president of the United States. He won. There were tens of thousands of people who wanted to be president of the United States, hundreds of thousands who wanted to be, and he got it. So whether he's smart or not, it doesn't matter. He's the president and the rest of them aren't. So you have to give him that. It's not about Richard Nixon. Richard Nixon was a great politician. He was hopeless, but all he wanted was to be president, and he got it. So you have to give them credit for that. Mr. Trump, I'm afraid, may bring the whole system down, the whole world down, because he may make a lot of mistakes. I hope not. I hope that there are enough counterbalancing forces to save us all, but no, he doesn't seem to really understand history. He doesn't understand how economics. He doesn't understand much of anything. You know, he went bankrupt 5 or 6 times, and if it weren't for his father, we never would have heard of him. But no, he won the presidency.
I take it from that you're not his greatest fan.
I did not vote for Trump or Clinton, I should say. I voted the protest vote.
Okay. So you mentioned the U.S. economy there. I mean, what are your major concerns at the moment? I mean, the subjects that come up most often are the national debt, about trade wars with China and many other countries, or are you maybe not worried at all?
Well, Martin, you can answer the question. At the Federal Reserve, the American Central Bank is probably my major concern. The American Congress, the American President, the debt. You know all the things, and what I'm afraid of is, trade wars often lead to real wars. But with Trump there, we may not have to have the trade war. We get the real war without a trade war. There are many things that can explode. And, the United States stock market is at an all-time high. It hasn't had it's been going up for over 10 years, the longest in American history. Doesn't mean it can't go up for 20 years. Who knows? But it's certainly overdue for problems.
And you mentioned the Fed there. I mean, what would you say the Fed has done wrong?
Everything. What? Don't you read the paper? But I know what's going on. They've been printing money for, I guess actually Greenspan really started in 1987 or so was when the real disaster started. But for the past 20 years, the central bank in America has printed staggering amounts of money. They won't let anybody go bankrupt. They keep driving rates to the lowest in recorded history, and they don't know what they're doing. Whenever things get bad, they get scared and panic and say, "Oh my, we're sorry. And people call up and say, "Save us." And what do they know? They're bureaucrats and academics, and they've driven interest rates. The interest rates have never been this low in the history of the world. And occasionally one of them will slip and admit, "Oh, this is an experiment. We don't know if it's going to work." I do know it's not going to work. We're all going to pay a horrible price.
And yet I could argue with you that the Federal Reserve has among the highest interest rates in the developed world. It's being pressured by Donald Trump to lower them still more. It seems to have done a decent job over the last 10 years. I mean, playing devil's advocate, I don't know what it should have done differently.
You can do certainly. Well, what they should have done differently was in 2008 when Lehman Brothers went bankrupt. They should have let other people go bankrupt too, but they panicked and started saving people right, left, and center. The way the system is supposed to work, Martin, is when people get in trouble, they go bankrupt. Competent people come along, take over the assets, reorganize, and start over. What we are doing, and when I say we, almost the whole world, we have been going in, taking the assets away from the competent people, giving them to the incompetent people, and saying to the incompetent people, "Okay, now you can compete with the competent people with their money." I mean, this is absurd. It's not supposed to work that way. In the early 1920s, America had huge problems. You know what happened? The Federal Reserve raised interest rates. Washington balanced the budget. We had a horrible year or two, but then we had the most extraordinary economic decade in the history of America. That's the way I'll tell you another one. In the early 90s, Scandinavia got into problems. They let people go bankrupt. It was horrible for 2 or 3 years. But then Scandinavia had an absolute boom for many, many years because they let the system clean itself out. At the same time, the Japanese refused to let people go bankrupt. Well, the rest of the story. The Japanese market is down 50% 29 years later. It's 3 decades. They had 1 lost decade, 2 lost decades. Now they're having 3 lost decades. This is all wonderful for the people who are getting saved, but in the big picture, it's not a very good system.
And yet Mr. Trump would say that the Fed hasn't eased monetary policy enough. Indeed, he has already said that many times. He's just simply wrong then, is he?
Mr. Trump wants to be president. That's a different conversation. Yes, Mr. Trump will say that. You haven't helped me enough. And from his point of view, they haven't. I'm not so interested in who's president. I'm more interested in how the system is going to work. America's the largest debtor nation in the history of the world, Martin. Every country in the world that's ever gotten into this kind of situation has had a crisis or a semi-crisis. We may come, maybe we never will. Maybe America's going to go on for decades. But no country in history has gotten out without a serious problem.
That doesn't sound very good. Against this background, what's your view of the US dollar then?
I own a lot of U.S. dollars. I'm sure you're going to say this guy's nuts. He's lost his mind. I own a lot of U.S. dollars because there is turmoil coming. And in times of turmoil, people look for a safe haven. Well, the U.S. dollar is considered a safe haven for historic reasons. And these days, because there's nothing else, you're not going to buy sterling. You're not going to buy the euro. There's nothing you can buy because everything else is such a mess. So I own a lot of U.S. dollars. When the turmoil gets really bad, the U.S. dollar is going to get overpriced. It might turn into a bubble. Who knows if it's bad enough. I hope that at that point I'm smart enough to sell my U.S. dollar, especially if it becomes a bubble. You have to sell bubbles and put my money elsewhere.
And yet the U.S. dollar has only relatively recently been seen as a safe haven. Traditionally, people think of the Japanese yen, the Swiss franc, gold, and so forth. You think the dollar is safer now?
I didn't say the U.S. is the largest debtor nation in the history of the world. It's getting worse every day. No, I didn't say it's safer. It's just that people's perception is. The Swiss franc, I mean, it's astonishing to me what the Swiss National Bank have done. I mean, when I was a kid, there was nothing sounder than the Swiss franc. I mean, the soul of integrity in the nation, in the bank, and everywhere else. It's a shock what they've done in Switzerland, and more people will find out. The Swiss franc, if they race to the Swiss franc, they'll get out fast. Everything, I mean, the yen, yes, but, you know, Japan has staggering debts, and their debts are going, you know, Japan is one of my favorite countries. But Martin, the population has been going down for 10 years. The debt has been going up for 40 years. You know, if you're a 10-year-old Japanese, you better get out of there. You better immigrate. Or you better get yourself an AK-47 because there's going to be social turmoil in your lifetime.
You've been quoted as predicting a severe downturn there. I mean, a seriously severe downturn. Do you still hold with that?
In Japan?
Yeah.
I mean, I owned Japanese shares until a few months ago. So, yes, but it's not happening this month, Martin. Don't get me wrong. We were talking about the big picture and what's going to happen to currencies and markets. No, I actually was thinking about buying my Japanese shares back recently. But the facts are, if you're a 10-year-old Japanese boy or girl, you should get out of there.
Yeah, you did an interview, I think, with the Japan Times, which I don't know if they quoted you correctly, but you were certainly very tough on what was going wrong in Japan at the moment.
Yes, I mean, it's just stunning. The Japanese central bank has said out loud, we will print unlimited amounts of money. I mean, they said that. In my lifetime, no central bank would ever say something like that, no matter how hopeless they were. But now that's what's happened to central banking in the past decade or two in the world. The Japanese, and what's happened to the Japanese central bank every day, they print money and they buy stocks and bonds. It's mind-boggling to somebody who's been around for a while or knows a little history. This has never ever happened, anything like this. But the Japanese central bank, and they're quite happy to tell you they're doing it, we're going to print their word, unlimited amounts of money, and we're going to buy stocks and bonds. Well, that's great for stockbrokers and bondholders, but you know, for 10-year-old Japanese kids, oh my God.
Okay, so if we could come to Europe for a moment, do you think? What do you make of Boris Johnson, the new UK Prime Minister, and the whole Brexit subject? Do you have views on that?
Well, again, Boris Johnson is the Prime Minister of the UK. There are tens of thousands of people who would like the job, and he did it. So he's done something right. Now, the next question is he good for the country? Is he good for the world? That remains to be seen. The British voted to leave the EU. If I were in charge, I would have voted to abolish Brussels. It's not the EU that's the problem. It's Brussels that's the problem. They should somehow, Europe should figure out a way to abolish Brussels, but keep the EU, or at least the common market. That's how it started. Common market is great, but the British didn't have that. That was not on the ballot. The ballot was stay in or get out. They couldn't vote to abolish Brussels. So here's what's his name with the problem, Boris Johnson with the problem of what does he do now? He doesn't want to be in the EU, and if he doesn't want to be in the EU and his country has supported him, he's got to get him out of there. And he is. He's quite adamant that he is. I cannot imagine that on November 1st, Britain will still be in the EU. Is that good for the world? Let's see. I don't know. I've already told you we're going to have the worst. Maybe I haven't told you. I've told you it's been over 10 years since we've had a problem in the world economy, in the U.S. economy anyway. And I will tell you that the next time we have one is going to be the worst in my lifetime. Because, you know, in 2008 we had a problem of too much debt. Well, Martin, since then the debt has skyrocketed everywhere. Even China has debt now. And they had very little debt 15 years ago. So the next economic problem will be the worst in my lifetime. It'll be exacerbated by things like Brexit. It'll be exacerbated by many things going forward. So you should be worried, Martin. Don't you listen to your program?
I think it's a matter of timing, isn't it? I mean, there are certain people around, very well-respected commentators, who've been predicting doom and gloom for the last 20, 30 years. It's all a matter of timing, isn't it? We don't know if such a crash were to happen, when it might be.
Well, Martin, what I said was the next. I didn't say when or anything else.
Well, indeed.
All I said was the next economic problem is going to be the worst in my lifetime. No, I've told you it's not going to happen this month. It's not going to happen this quarter. But the next time we have one, you'll go back. In 2008, we had a problem of too much debt. Martin, in the last 10 or 11 years, debt has skyrocketed everywhere. Everybody talks austerity, but nobody's practiced austerity. No, we're going to have huge problems the next time around. You tell me when the next time around is, okay? That would help me a lot.
Oh, I wish I knew. Going back to currencies, there's been a lot of chatter about sterling reaching parity with the euro or even parity with the US dollar. I don't know whether you agree with that, but from a long-term perspective, I mean, is there any hope for sterling, or should we say, because all the headlines are saying it's crashing, that maybe now is the time for a sort of contrarian bounce? How do you see things?
Well, again, I'm the worst market timer in the world. I'm the worst short-term trader in the world. But I will tell you that the UK has enormous debts. What's so surprising to me is how few people seem to know or even pay attention or care that the UK has such huge debts. And you have nothing to sell. They have nothing to sell anymore except the English language, some education, universities, etc. But they have nothing to sell. There was a time they had cars, they have oil. They have the City of London and they have oil. Well, the City of London is now going to be under serious duress because the Europeans are not going to say to the British, oh, you've gone. We're going to keep doing all of our business in the City of London. No, of course they're going to develop European sites, and they're already starting to do that. And the other thing they have to sell is oil. But if the Scots leave, and they may. There are indications they may. Well, if the Scots leave, what's left? City of London's gone. Oil's gone. What are they going to sell? They can't sell Triumph motorcycles anymore. They don't have any. They can't sell BSA motorcycles. They don't have any cars to sell except Rolls Royces. Well, that only goes so far. No, I mean, the Britons could be forget a parity with the euro. Parity with the US dollar would go much lower than that. I mean, if the Scots leave, Martin, what's left? Yes, people will still go there to learn English. But Oxford and Cambridge can only take so many people. The university, the educational institutions can only take so many people to learn English.
Well, you've already mentioned financial services. I mean, it is conceivable that London could stay as a major financial centre after Brexit. Pharmaceuticals, the defence industry, all this sort of modern stuff like designing computer games and so on. I mean, the UK could actually move even further away from agriculture and manufacturing into these much more sort of modern, for want of better words, industries to be in.
Well, you mentioned finance, and it could. I mean, I'm not suggesting the City of London is going to disappear, but a lot of their business, huge amounts of their business, is just the euro alone. Well, euro clearing is not going to be in London anymore. Plenty of Frankfurt, Amsterdam, plenty of places can do it, have the expertise, and will do it. And the Europeans, well, maybe you're right. Maybe all the Europeans are going to say, well, okay, the British left, but we'll let them continue to be the financial center of Europe. Unlikely in my view.
Moving to Asia now then. So around 12 years ago, you wrote the book, A Bull in China. I think from what you were saying earlier that you are still a bull of China. Is that right?
Yes. But again, we must make sure that this is clear. The United States became the most successful country in the 20th century. But along the way, we had 15 depressions. We had that's with a D. We had a horrible civil war. We had massacres in the streets. We had very little rule of law. I mean, we were a disaster. But we became the most successful country in the 20th century. China's going to have lots of problems. Don't think it's just straight up. There'll be many problems. I don't know what or when or why, but Anybody, whether it's an individual or a family or a company or a country that rises, has setbacks along the way, Martin, and China will too. My children speak Mandarin. If I start seeing when I start seeing problems in China, I'm not going to say, okay, guys, let's stop the Mandarin. Let's now speak Danish or something else. Mandarin is still going to be the most important language in their lifetime.
Yeah, a friend of mine in Singapore also has children there who are learning Mandarin. Could that really overtake English as the global language?
Well, it's already number 2, if nothing else, because there's so many Chinese. Can it? Yes. Will it? Not in your lifetime, probably, and certainly not in my lifetime. But ask me 100 years from now.
Okay.
I mean, there are already over 1.5 billion people in the world who use Chinese every day.
With me is Jim Rogers, the investment biker now based in Singapore. The other thing you're well known for, one other thing you're well known for apart from China is gold. Are you a gold bull or a gold bear?
Well, I have owned gold. I've owned gold for many years, decades in fact, but I haven't bought any serious gold since 2010. I am waiting for a great correction, collapse in the price of gold, and if it happens, I hope I'm smart enough to buy a lot more gold. It may not happen, Martin. If it does, don't worry. I got plenty of gold.
Lucky you.
I'm not going to suffer because gold is definitely going to go through the roof. Whenever people lose confidence in governments and money, they buy gold and silver. I mean, many academics will say that's crazy. That's nuts. Who cares? All of us peasants, French peasants, American peasants, we all know that when things are bad, we better own gold, no matter what the Ivy League professors say. So, yeah, I plan to buy a lot more gold and silver. But I'm waiting, if the kind of turmoil occurs, which I expect, in those kinds of turmoil, gold and silver go down for a while, as people have to sell something, have to sell everything. My plan is that when that happens, I'll be smart enough to sell my U.S. dollars and buy gold and silver. There are other things I might buy, but at the moment, the plan would be to buy depressed gold and silver, selling overpriced U.S. dollars or bubble U.S. dollars, and buying cheap gold and silver.
Of course, there are those who say that with interest rates negative now in many countries, although not the US, gold is actually more attractive simply because a zero rate of return is better than a negative rate of return.
Well, yes, but you could say that about wheat, too. You could say that about cotton. You could say that about a lot of stuff. To repeat, I own a lot of gold and silver. I haven't sold any. I haven't bought any in a few years. I'm waiting to buy more.
Is this physical gold? I mean, it's set in a safe somewhere.
Well, at the moment, yes. But if and when, obviously, if the markets are still functioning, the best way to buy gold and silver is to buy futures. You get enormous leverage if you get the timing right. I'm hopeless at timing, so I may get bankrupt. I may be so smart that I go bankrupt. No, but I plan to buy gold and silver futures as well as more physical when that time comes.
A third thing that you're famous for is an interest in agricultural commodities, and you mentioned wheat just now. What are your views on those now? Well,
agriculture has been a disaster for 35 years. The average age of farmers in America is 58. Average age in Japan is 67. I mean, the highest rate of suicide in the UK is in agriculture. Millions of Indian farmers have committed suicide. I mean, this is a disaster. All over the world, the average age of farmers in Canada is the oldest in recorded history. More people in America study public relations than study agriculture. So if you want to be rich and you like the outdoors, I would strongly urge you to learn to drive a tractor because nobody left soon in agriculture. So yes, agriculture prices are low. Sugar prices are down, more or less 80 or 90% since the all-time high, which was 45 years ago. That's not a typo. price of sugar is down 80 or 90% over the past 45 years. There's not much we know about in the world that's had a bear market like that. Maybe sugar's going to go to zero, but I doubt it. So in my view, agriculture is a much better place to be than most other things.
And yet you're constantly
finance, which has been hot for the last 35 or 40 years.
And yet in Wales, for example, they are absolutely scared stiff that after Brexit they won't be able to sell all the lambs that they're producing. How can prices go up when there's that sort of pressure on them to come down?
What kind of pressure?
That, as you said, the sugar price is very low, for example. So, I mean, I can see how that might be a buying opportunity. But on the other hand, if prices stay low and you're a sugar farmer, you go out of business.
That's bullish. That's what you want. That's my point. There's not going to be anybody left soon. They're all dying, retiring, committing suicide. Unless something happens, Martin, there's not going to be any farmers. Nobody's studying agriculture at universities anymore. One of Australia's ancient and famous agricultural university converted us to business degrees recently. It's everything you just got through saying is bullish. It's not bearish. It's bullish.
Okay. So, right, let's change subjects again, Jim. I suspect, although I don't know, that you have some quite strong views on Bitcoin. Most people seem to either love it or hate it. Which camp are you in?
Well, I mean, I've never bought any or sold any. I wish I had, obviously. I don't. Well, first, we need to understand that money is going to be on the computer. It's already moving to the computer. We're not going to have money anymore. I was in China, and the Chinese are far ahead of the rest of us. I was in China recently. I tried to buy some ice cream. The poor lady couldn't sell me. I had money. I had Chinese money. She couldn't take money. She didn't know what to do. She gave me the ice cream in the end. So money is going to be on the computer, and governments love that, by the way, because then they have even more control. They know everything you're doing and call up and say, Martin, you've been drinking too much coffee this month. They know everything you're doing, and they love that. Oh, my God, governments. I don't like it, but governments do. And so money's going to be on the computer, but it's not going to be their money. When I say their money, the crypto guys say we're smarter than the government. And, Martin, they are. For goodness sakes, they're much smarter than the government. But the government's got the guns. And in the end, in the 30s, people could use whatever they wanted for money. Sugar, seashells, gold. You could print your own bills if you wanted to. Currency. You could do anything you wanted. And the Bank of England said, well, starting next week, if you use anything except Bank of England money, it's an act of treason. Well, now, Martin, treason means they execute you. So, needless to say, people stopped using seashells and sheep and other things for money. They used what the government said. And that will happen again. Either way, either these things are going to fail on their own, and many already have. I mean, Martin, you must know staggering numbers have already failed. Yeah. And the government's going to step in and say, okay, guys, that was it. Now you use our money or treason.
So one or two countries, I think, are beginning to think about a cryptocurrency, like a crypto Swedish krona, for example. And we've got Facebook launching its Libra cryptocurrency. Do you see this developing conceivably as a national currency, or could it be a private sector currency?
Well, I've said to you, money is going to be on the computer.
Yeah, but who controls it?
Yeah, I'm saying to you, in the end, if you were a merchant, would you take Bitcoin in payment of your debts? If so, you probably are already out of business because the fluctuation has been so great, and many of them have already failed. The people who took cryptocurrencies as payment, many of them did fail because the cryptocurrencies failed. So money is different from something for speculating that goes up and down. I don't know of many people. Yes, there are some people who have taken and have made money in Bitcoin. But I cannot imagine that most supermarkets in the world are going to take, you can go in and buy Coca-Colas and bread with Bitcoin. Who's going to take it? Would you? If you were a merchant?
Certainly not.
You'd have to have a trading desk right there, at the counters, because the fluctuations are so great. That has no practical use as a currency. As something else, it has had practical use, but it's not going to replace stable store of value and store of mediums of exchange unless it's stable.
So it's not gold.
Maybe, well, probably not. If we have a gigantic crisis and the world is falling apart, the world may snatch for gold in the panic because there won't be anything else. But it's unlikely, just because I see that happening only if the world is in such turmoil and such chaos and nothing else can work except gold, which has happened for thousands of years. I don't see anything else. I don't see gold even doing that unless the turmoil is so bad. There will be, there'll be the J.P. Morgan currency, or there'll be the U.S. government currency, or the Chinese government currency on the computer. It'll be computer money, but in my view, it probably will not be cryptocurrency as we are defining cryptocurrency. If we're defining cryptocurrencies as computer money, yes, it's going to be nothing but computer money. Is it going to be these things that jump around and disappear and make fortunes and lose fortunes? No. Housewives are not going to use that for money. Neither are grocery stores.
Now, throughout our conversation so far, I get the impression that you're not, how can I put this, an economic optimist. I mean, is there anything to be optimistic about?
Yeah, agriculture. We've talked about it.
Beyond that, more.
Learn how to drive a tractor. Sure, many things. North Korea, wildly bullish on North Korea. Zimbabwe, Venezuela, Colombia. There are many things to be optimistic about in the world.
There are those who might perhaps argue that it's a bit early to start investing in North Korea, that it's a bit early to start assuming there's going to be a recovery in Venezuela, or is that the whole trick? It's getting into things while it's still too early. It's
been my experience that if you invest in, and by the way, it's illegal for me to invest in Venezuela and North Korea right now, so I cannot do either because I'm an American. But it's been my experience, if you invest in a country when it's catastrophe and it's finished, usually, 5-6 years later, you're wildly rich. Well, that's what's happening in Venezuela now. There's nothing there. If you can figure it out, and if you have the foresight, the vision, you're probably going to get unbelievably rich. Venezuela has been the richest country in Latin America at times, and it probably will be again someday. North Korea, gigantic changes taking place in North Korea. The kid has said he wants to do for North Korea what Deng Xiaoping did for China. And in my view, North Korea today is where China was, 1981 or so. And none of this gets reported in the Western press, of course, because it's full of American propaganda and South Korean propaganda, which is a copy of American propaganda and Japanese propaganda. But there are gigantic changes taking place. It's where China was in 1981.
Now, I know you've written...
But Martin, I want to say again, I'm an American. I cannot invest there. Many people, it's illegal to invest there. So don't go rushing off. And if you did invest in North Korea, you got to go there and do it because there's no stock exchange or anything else.
Okay. No, I know you've written many books on many different subjects, including Investment Biker, which detailed your journey around the world on a motorbike, and including a bull in China, which we've already talked about. What's your latest book on investing or economics? And I know you write about other things as well. And what's the theme of it?
Well, it's interesting you ask. Last year, a couple of Japanese journalists came here and did a long interview, and they said, "Oh, we're going to publish this." I said, "Okay, do it." And I forgot about it. They called me in the spring and said, "Oh, Jim, you must come to Tokyo." I said, "Why?" "Your book is the #1 bestseller of every book in Japan." I was stunned. I was shocked. I've forgotten about the book. And I'm leading up to something. And so another Japanese book is just being published as we speak. And likewise in Korea will be published probably in a month or two. Same thing. Journalists come, interview me, transcribe it, edit it, and then publish it. The basic theme of the Japanese book, which became the #1 bestseller, was that Japan is in decline and Korea is on the rise. This new Japanese book, the title
that must have gone down well in Japan.
Yes, that's what's even more shocking. That it became, the Japanese don't like any foreigners, certainly not the Koreans, for goodness sakes. Mm-hmm. This second book, this new Japanese book is more or less the same theme. Gosh, it develops the theme. You've got problems. Whether we like it or not, and I love Japan. My God, I love Japan. But whether we like it or not, the population's been in decline for 10 years. The debt's been going through the roof. It's printing more and more money every day. That's not a bullish future, and I write about all that. The Korean book more or less says Korea's on the rise, and as an aside, Japan's on the rise, on the decline as well, which of course the Koreans will love after being beaten up by the Japanese for 100 years. But it's more from a Korean perspective of why Korea is the peninsula is going to be the most exciting place in the world for the next 10 or 20 years.
Finally, Jim, what would you say is the #1 lesson you've learnt from your career in finance?
I'm trying to figure out a way to be skeptical. Don't believe anything. Do your own work, and don't follow the crowd. So I'm trying to teach my daughters, for instance, to think independently, not to accept what they read in the papers, to see on the TV or on the internet. I'm trying to teach them to be very curious, be skeptical, curious, independent, and beware of boys.
Okay. What do you do when you're not being an investor and an economist and all these other things that you are? What do you do in your free time?
Well, I'm a director of a few companies. I make a lot of speeches around the world, which I love doing. And basically my daughters, I didn't have children until I was 60. I was adamant that children were a horrible, horrible mistake and people should not do it. Well, I was wrong. Had my first child when I was 60, and so now, and my second when I was 65, so now I'm doing all I can with my children.
Jim Rogers, thank you very much for your time. It's been really good speaking to you.
My pleasure, Martin. We'll do it again. Thank you.
Indeed. Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Thank you for listening to the Trading Global Markets Decoded with DailyFX podcast. This podcast is brought to you by IG. Check us out at dailyfx.com. If you love the Trading Global Markets Decoded with DailyFX podcast, we'd love for you to subscribe, rate, and give us a review on iTunes. We'll see you next time.